My husband had a nephew suffering from end-stage kidney failure. After discovering that he was a compatible donor, he told me about his decision to donate a kidney. I was deeply concerned. James had always been in poor health, and donating a kidney could put his life at risk. I spent weeks researching, reading medical journals, consulting specialists, and gathering every piece of information I could find. When I tried to explain the dangers to him, he hesitated, his expression troubled. But he didn't refuse outright. For a while, the surgery was postponed. But Ethan's condition kept deteriorating, and with each passing day, my sister-in-law, Olivia, looked at me with growing hatred. One evening, she stormed into our house, her face contorted in rage. "You selfish, heartless woman," she shrieked, stepping toward me aggressively. Before I could react, she slapped me across the face. The impact was so sudden, so vicious, that I stumbled backward. "How could you stand by and let Ethan die?" she screamed, her hands clenching into fists. "You're his aunt. How can you be so cruel?" Pain bloomed across my cheek, but I barely registered it. I turned to James, my husband, the man who had vowed to protect me. He stood just a few feet away, watching everything unfold. He did nothing. "James!" My voice trembled as I reached out to him, silently pleading for him to stop this. He sighed, rubbing his temples as if he were simply tired of dealing with me. Then, in a calm voice, he said, "Emily, how can you just stand by and watch a child die? You have to understand a mother's pain when her child is in danger." My breath caught in my throat. A mother? Something about the way he said that sent a chill through my bones. Why did James sound so desperate, so personal about Ethan's life? Why did Olivia look so certain, so entitled to his support? I had so many questions, but before I could say a word, Olivia grabbed me by the shoulders and shoved me hard. I felt my stomach drop. The edge of the balcony railing vanished beneath me. The sky spun above me, and then I was falling. The wind roared past my ears, my body twisted in the air. In that split second, everything clicked into place. James Carter and Olivia had been together all along. He wasn't donating a kidney out of kindness. He thought Ethan was his son. And the most cruel truth of all? James Carter was infertile. I had the medical proof, but I had never told him. Now it was too late. I hit the ground, and everything went black. Darkness. Cold, suffocating, endless darkness. I should be dead. My body should be shattered, my bones broken beyond repair, but instead, I gasped, air rushing into my lungs as my eyes snapped open. The world around me felt too familiar, too real. The soft golden glow of the evening sun spilled through the window, casting long shadows across the living room. The scent of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air. I was sitting on our couch, a stack of medical papers neatly arranged on the table in front of me. I recognized this moment. My hands trembled as I reached forward, picking up the paper on top. My vision blurred as I read the words printed in bold. Kidney donor compatibility test. James Carter, positive match. My heart slammed against my ribcage. This was the day. The day James first told me about donating his kidney to Ethan. The day everything began to fall apart. I should have been dead. I had died. Olivia had killed me. James had let it happen. I had felt my body hit the ground, and yet I was back. I let out a shaky breath, my mind reeling. Was this a dream? A cruel trick of the afterlife? Or was this a second chance? I reached for the edge of the table and dug my nails into the wood, feeling its solidness beneath my fingertips. No, this wasn't a dream. This was real. A bitter, twisted smile spread across my lips. Fate had given me another chance. But this time, I would not be the weak, naive wife who begged for love. I would not be the fool who sacrificed everything for a man who never valued me. This time, I would be the one pulling the strings. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. I quickly wiped the raw hatred from my face and arranged my features into a neutral expression. A moment later, James entered the room, his brows furrowed in deep thought. "Emily," he said, his voice carrying the same hesitant, troubled tone I had once mistaken for sincerity. "I need to talk to you about something important." I set the paper down carefully, folding my hands in my lap. "Of course, James. What is it?" He sighed and sat down beside me, running a hand through his hair. "It's about Ethan. He needs a kidney transplant, and, well, I'm a match." I studied his face, the carefully rehearsed look of concern, the way he avoided my gaze. I had been so blind in my past life. I had worried for him, begged him to reconsider. I had spent nights crying, pleading for him to put his own health first. But I knew better now. I knew that James didn't hesitate because he was weighing the risks. He hesitated because deep down he knew what he was doing was selfish. He wasn't donating out of kindness. He was donating because he thought Ethan was his son. But this time, I wouldn't fight him. I wouldn't cry or beg. I would let him believe I was still the same trusting wife. So I took a deep breath, reached for his hand, and smiled softly. "That's amazing, James," I said, squeezing his fingers gently. "You're such a good man." He looked startled. In my past life, I had argued. I had resisted. Now I was agreeing without question. "So, you're okay with this?" he asked cautiously. "Of course," I murmured. "If you truly believe this is what's best, then I'll support you." His shoulders relaxed. A relieved smile crossed his lips. He bought it. I kept my own smile in place, but inside, my mind was already spinning with plans. If James wanted to be a hero, I would make sure he paid the price for it. If Olivia wanted to destroy me, I would drag her down first. I turned my gaze toward the hallway, where I knew Olivia would appear soon, ready to flaunt her victory. She didn't know it yet, but she had already lost. James didn't know it yet, but he had just sealed his own fate. This time, I will be the one who destroys you both. The first time around, I was helpless. Trapped in a life where no one listened to me, where every attempt to stand up for myself was twisted into selfishness. Not this time. This time, I would control the narrative. The morning after my supportive conversation with James, I made a deliberate move. I stood in front of the mirror, practiced the perfect expression, a mix of concern, devotion, and quiet sorrow, before stepping into the kitchen, where James sat drinking coffee. I sighed heavily, making sure he noticed. "Emily?" James looked up, frowning. "What's wrong?" I hesitated, biting my lip. "I didn't sleep much last night. I kept thinking about you, about how much this surgery could affect your health." His eyes softened. He reached across the table to take my hand. "I know it's a big decision, but Ethan needs me," he said, his voice full of conviction. I lowered my eyes, letting unshed tears glisten in them. "I just don't know what I would do if something happened to you." James visibly relaxed. This was what he expected from me. A devoted wife, clinging to him, putting his well-being first. "I'll be fine," he assured me. "You're overthinking it, Em." I gave a small nod, my hands trembling just enough to look real. I needed to plant this image. Emily Carter, the worried but supportive wife, because soon this act of concern would become a powerful weapon. That afternoon, I visited our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Henderson. She was the kind of woman who loved to chat, especially when it came to gossiping about other people's affairs. As I sat in her living room, I let a single tear slip down my cheek. "I don't want to be selfish," I murmured, dabbing at my eyes with a tissue. "But James is already so weak. I just can't bear the thought of losing him." Mrs. Henderson gasped, reaching for my hands. "Oh, honey, of course you're worried. A kidney transplant isn't something small. That Olivia girl has no right to pressure him into this." I sniffled. She loves her son, you know? And James has always been too kind-hearted to say no." The moment I defended Olivia, Mrs. Henderson's eyes narrowed in suspicion. "That woman has always been pushy," she muttered. "Poor James, being caught between the two of you like this." I pressed my lips together, looking away as if I were trying not to speak ill of Olivia. By the time I left, Mrs. Henderson was fully on my side, and I knew the neighborhood gossip train had just left the station. 3 days later, I visited James at work, bringing him homemade lunch. It was the perfect scene. A loving wife, concerned for her husband's well-being. When his co-workers gathered around, I sighed and said softly, "I just want to make sure he's eating well. The surgery is such a big risk." James, unaware of my plan, placed a reassuring hand on my back. "Emily's been worried about me," he told his co-workers, shaking his head like I was being dramatic. Exactly what I wanted. Within hours, the whispers began. "Did you hear? James's wife is really worried about his surgery." "Well, yeah, giving away a kidney at his age? It's reckless. I heard his sister-in-law is forcing him into it." By the next morning, even James's boss pulled him aside to ask if he was absolutely sure about this decision. Olivia, of course, heard everything, and she was furious. The final piece of my plan was the most dangerous, but also the most satisfying. That weekend, during a family dinner, I waited until the perfect moment. James's mother, his aunt, and a few distant relatives were gathered around, discussing Ethan's condition in hushed voices. Olivia sat across from me, her eyes filled with triumph, thinking she was finally getting what she wanted. I took a deep breath, feigning hesitation, before softly saying, "James, since Ethan means so much to you, why don't we make it official?" The table fell silent. James frowned. "What do you mean?" I turned to his mother, my expression gentle and understanding. "I know how much James loves Ethan, and I know he wants to be there for him, no matter what. So, if James really considers Ethan his son, why don't we legally adopt him?" Olivia's fork clattered onto her plate. James blinked in shock. "Adopt Ethan?" I nodded. "Of course, if you love him enough to sacrifice your health for him, shouldn't we make it official? That way, even legally, he'll always have you as his father." Olivia's hands tightened into fists. She looked around the table, realizing what I had done. I had made James's love for Ethan a public declaration. If she protested now, she would look like a selfish, ungrateful mother. But if she agreed, she risked the truth coming out, that Ethan was never James's son to begin with. I watched as her face turned pale, her mind racing. James, oblivious to the tension, glanced at Olivia. "I mean, it does make sense, right? Ethan and I already have a bond." "No," Olivia blurted out, her voice sharper than she intended. The room fell silent again. James stared at her. "What? Why not?" Olivia quickly covered her reaction, forcing a weak laugh. I mean, it's unnecessary, right? He already sees you as family." But her panic had already exposed her. I hid my smirk behind my napkin, pretending to dab my lips. The damage was done. James had noticed. Everyone at the table had noticed. And under the weight of family expectations, social pressure, and his own ego, James nodded slowly. "You know what, Emily? You're right. If Ethan's my son in every way that matters, we should make it official." Olivia looked ready to scream. And I had just won the first battle, because now Olivia had everything to lose. James had committed, publicly in front of family, to a legal process that would force a paternity test. And when that truth came out, James wouldn't just be hurt. He would be destroyed. I smiled at Olivia across the table, my voice sweet and gentle. "I just want what's best for our family." And in her wide, horrified eyes I saw it. She finally understood. I wasn't her prey anymore. I was her worst nightmare. The night before James's surgery, I sat at the dining table, my fingers hovering over my phone screen. My bank app was open. The joint account I shared with James displayed a balance in the 6 figures, savings accumulated over the years, mostly from my own hard work. I took a deep breath and clicked transfer all funds. Within seconds, every last penny was moved into my personal account. A rush of satisfaction filled me as I watched the balance in our joint account drop to 0. "You took everything from me," I whispered under my breath, thinking of how James and Olivia had destroyed my past life. "Now I'll take everything from you." I didn't stop with the money. I booked myself a luxury vacation, a first-class flight to Miami, a 5-star beachfront resort, a full spa package. I wasn't running away. I was celebrating. As I packed my bags, I scrolled through my phone one last time, making sure everything was in place. Bank accounts drained, luxury vacation booked. Fake tearful goodbye message scheduled to send at 6 a.m. Anonymous email to James's employer, pending. I paused, smirking as I reviewed the email one last time. Subject: urgent, financial misconduct investigation. I am writing to inform you of potential fraudulent activities linked to one of your employees, James Carter. Attached, you will find documented evidence showing financial inconsistencies and unauthorized transactions made under his name. It is in the company's best interest to launch an internal investigation immediately. Anonymous source attached were copies of forged financial records, the ones Olivia had manipulated using James's credentials. I never touched a single dollar of that money myself, which meant the paper trail would lead straight to them. James's career was about to go up in flames, and Olivia would be dragged down with him. Satisfied, I hit send. Then, without looking back, I walked out the door. James woke up to excruciating pain. His entire body felt weak, as if a piece of him had been carved away. Which, in a way, it had. The surgery was over. His kidney was gone. He blinked against the blinding fluorescent lights of the hospital room, his vision still blurry from the anesthesia. He reached out, expecting to feel my hand, expecting to hear my worried voice. But there was nothing. The chair beside his bed was empty. The hospital room was silent. Confused, he reached for his phone, his fingers shaking. The screen lit up with dozens of missed calls, all made by him. Frantic, he dialed my number again, pressing the phone to his ear despite the pain. The number you have dialed is unavailable. Please try again later. James's blood ran cold. Where was I? His breathing turned ragged as he scrolled through his messages, his hands trembling. And then, finally, he saw it. One unread text from me. I'm sorry, James. I can't do this anymore. Watching you suffer would be too painful for me. I need time to think. Please don't look for me. His heart dropped. No, this wasn't happening. I wasn't here. I had left him, on the day of his surgery when he needed me most. Emily, he whispered hoarsely, his vision spinning as panic set in. A nurse walked in, her face a mixture of pity and professionalism. Mr. Carter, you need to rest. Your blood pressure. Where's my wife? James rasped, gripping the edge of the bed. Call her, now. The nurse hesitated before softly saying, she left instructions not to be contacted. James felt like he had been punched in the gut. I had really abandoned him, and for the first time he was the one left behind. Hours later, James was discharged from the hospital. He limped into our house, still groggy, still in pain. But the moment he stepped inside, he realized something was very wrong. The house was cold, empty. No bags, no clothes. Every single trace of me was gone. His hands shook as he rushed to his laptop, logging into our bank account. When he saw the balance, his stomach dropped. No, he gasped, refreshing the page over and over, but the balance didn't change. Everything was gone. Everything. Panic surged through him as he checked our savings account, investment portfolio, even the emergency funds, and every single one was drained. And then, just as horror fully set in, his phone rang. James snatched it up, desperate for any good news. But the moment he saw the caller ID, his boss, his blood turned to ice. James, the voice on the other end said, we need to talk. James sat in his boss's office, sweat beading on his forehead. In front of him were printed documents, spreadsheets, transaction logs, evidence of financial fraud linked to his employee ID. James, these reports are extremely serious, his boss said, flipping through the pages. Your name is all over them. We're launching a full investigation, but in the meantime. The next words shattered him. You're suspended, effective immediately. His mouth went dry. But I didn't. Save it, his boss cut in. You'll have a chance to explain to the board, but if these documents hold up, we're looking at criminal charges. James felt the walls closing in. He had lost everything in less than 24 hours. His health, his wife, his money. and now his career. He stumbled out of the office, dazed, his mind spinning. This wasn't possible. It couldn't be real. But as he walked through the lobby, a new rumor was already spreading among his coworkers. Did you hear? James Carter is being investigated for fraud. I heard his wife left him too. Took all his money. Wow, talk about bad luck. James sank onto a bench, clutching his head in his hands. He had thought he was untouchable, that he could betray me, destroy me, and walk away unscathed. Now he was the one left broken, humiliated, and alone. And as he stared at his phone, one final realization hit him. This wasn't bad luck. This was Emily's revenge. And it was only the beginning. James Carter sat in his dimly lit living room, staring blankly at the thick envelope in his hands. His fingers trembled as he traced the bold, black letters across the front. Paternity test results. Confidential. His stomach churned. This was impossible. Ever since rumors started swirling about his suspension from work, James had been desperate to find some sense of stability. He had lost his wife, his money, his career, but at least he still had Ethan. At least his son was still his. But then, the anonymous package had arrived that morning. No return address, no sender. Inside, he had found the DNA results he had never thought to question before. And now, here he was, sitting alone in the dark, afraid to open the envelope. His breath was unsteady as he slid a finger under the seal and pulled out the crisp white papers. His eyes scanned the first few lines. Then, 99.99% probability of non-paternity. James's vision blurred, his entire body went numb. The paper trembled in his grip. Ethan wasn't his son. The truth crashed over him like a tidal wave. He had sacrificed his health, his career, his dignity for a child that was never his. An hour later, James stormed into Olivia's house, his fists clenched, his face twisted in fury. James, Olivia barely had time to react before he threw the DNA report onto the table in front of her. Explain this. His voice was dangerously low, laced with barely controlled rage. Olivia's face paled. Her hands twitched as she reached for the envelope, skimming the results. I don't know what this is, she stammered, trying to feign ignorance. James slammed his hand on the table, making her flinch. Don't lie to me, Olivia, he roared. I gave up everything for that boy. I risked my life in that damn surgery because I thought he was mine. Olivia swallowed hard. Her carefully crafted mask was slipping. James, please, Ho is his father. James's voice shook the walls. Olivia stepped backward, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. It's not what you think. Then what the hell is it? Her silence was all the confirmation he needed. James felt something inside him shatter completely. He stumbled back, his head spinning. For years he had blindly believed Olivia's words. For years he had been a pawn in her lies. And all this time she had known. She had watched him throw away everything for a child that wasn't his. And she had let him. A bitter, humorless laugh escaped his lips. You're a monster, he whispered, his voice devoid of emotion. Olivia rushed toward him, grabbing his arm. James, please, I didn't mean for it to happen this way. He yanked his arm away as if her touch physically disgusted him. I want another test, he spat. I want to know the full extent of your damn lies. Then, without waiting for her response, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. James sat in the clinic 2 days later, staring at yet another sealed envelope. This time, it wasn't a paternity test. It was a fertility test. His hands were cold as he opened it, and when his eyes landed on the result, his entire world collapsed. Permanent infertility. James felt bile rise in his throat. It wasn't just Ethan. He could never have children. He had spent his entire life raising another man's son, sacrificing his health, his wealth, while Olivia had laughed behind his back. His hands trembled as he ran them through his hair, despair creeping into his soul. His life had been a lie from the very beginning. And the worst part? He had thrown away the one person who actually loved him, Emily. While James spiraled into depression and isolation, I was carefully shaping the final stage of my plan. By now, the entire neighborhood had heard about James's downfall. His suspension from work, his mysterious health decline, his wife leaving him after struggling to support him through his surgery. I returned at just the right moment. I showed up at church first, knowing that Mrs. Henderson and the other neighbors gathered there every Sunday. I dressed in muted colors, my face pale, my hands deliberately shaking. "Oh, Emily, dear," Mrs. Henderson gasped when she saw me. "You poor thing, we heard about James. How are you holding up?" I let out a shaky breath, biting my lip as if trying to hold back tears. I don't know what else I could have done," I whispered, my voice full of heartbreak. The other women leaned in, waiting for me to continue. "I stood by him through everything," I murmured. "I tried to support him after the surgery, but he just kept pushing me away." A hushed silence fell over the group. "He changed," I added, my voice trembling. "It's like he became someone I didn't recognize anymore." Mrs. Henderson patted my hand gently. "Oh, honey, you did everything you could. A wife can only take so much pain." A few other women nodded in agreement, whispering among themselves, "You're such a strong woman, Emily. James always took you for granted. He was lucky to have you." And just like that, public sympathy shifted completely in my favor. Meanwhile, James drowned in his own misery. He barely left his house. He barely ate, slept, or spoke to anyone. News of his scandal at work had spread. No one wanted to hire him. The whispers had changed. "Did you hear? James Carter lost everything. His wife left him, his job's gone, and now people are saying he's struggling mentally." Poor Emily. She tried so hard to help him, but he just broke. Everywhere James turned, the world was against him. And the worst part? I had never directly lied. I simply let him destroy himself. I watched from a distance as James sat alone in his house, surrounded by the wreckage of his own choices. He had lost everything. But I wasn't done with him yet, because this was just the beginning of his suffering. James Carter was no longer the man he used to be. Once he had been confident, respected, untouchable. Now he was a broken shell of himself, unemployed, abandoned, and drowning in regret. But regret wasn't enough to save him, because the worst was yet to come. James sat in the dark, suffocating silence of his house, an empty bottle of whiskey clutched in his trembling hands. The furniture was in disarray, papers scattered across the floor, half-packed suitcases lying abandoned in the hallway. He had spent days trying to find a way out of the disaster his life had become, but there was no escape. His career was over. His company had officially terminated his contract after the fraud allegations. No one would hire him now. His reputation was ruined. Neighbors whispered about how his wife left him, how his mental state had deteriorated, and worst of all, the truth about Ethan had destroyed him. James stared at his reflection in the cracked mirror across the room. His face was unshaven, his eyes bloodshot, his once proud posture now slouched in defeat. A knock on the door jolted him from his thoughts. Then another. Louder. "James, open the damn door." It was Olivia. His chest tightened with fury. The woman who had manipulated him, lied to him, let him sacrifice everything for a child that was never his. And yet, she still had the audacity to show up here. James stood up unsteadily, stumbling toward the door before ripping it open. Olivia stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her face twisted in anger. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she snapped. "You've been ignoring my calls, disappearing like a coward. Do you have any idea what I'm dealing with right now?" James laughed bitterly. "What you're dealing with?" he repeated, his voice dangerously low. "You destroyed my life, Olivia. And you're standing here acting like you're the victim?" Olivia's expression darkened. "I didn't destroy anything, James. You were an idiot who believed whatever you wanted to believe." His blood boiled. "I believed you because I thought you were family," he roared, his voice shaking the walls. "I gave up my health, my career, my damn wife for you." Olivia rolled her eyes. "Oh, please," she scoffed. "Emily was always gonna leave you. She was just waiting for the right moment. Don't blame me for your stupidity. Something inside James snapped completely. Without thinking, he grabbed Olivia's arm and shoved her backward. She stumbled. Her eyes widened in shock as she lost her footing. Then, she tumbled down the staircase. The sound of her body hitting the steps, again and again, echoed through the house. Then, silence. James froze, his heart pounding. Olivia lay sprawled at the bottom of the stairs, moaning in pain, her leg twisted at an unnatural angle. His breath came in short, shallow gasps. "Oh God," he whispered, staggering back. Then, the front door swung open, and standing there, her phone still in her hand, was Emily. I had been waiting for this moment, the moment James finally lost control. I stepped inside, feigning shock and horror as I rushed toward Olivia. "Oh my God," I gasped. "What happened?" Olivia groaned, clutching her leg. He pushed me. I pulled out my phone, dialed 911, and spoke loudly enough for James to hear every single word. "Hello, yes, I need an ambulance. There's been a domestic violence incident." I turned my gaze toward James, watching his face drain of color. "Yes," I continued, my voice shaking with just the right amount of emotion. "It's my ex-husband. He attacked his sister-in-law. Please hurry." James stumbled back, his eyes wild with panic. "Emily." I ignored him, keeping my voice firm. "Yes, I think she might have broken her leg. And I don't feel safe here." James stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. "You set me up." I tilted my head, giving him a small, almost sympathetic smile. "No, James," I said softly. "You did this to yourself." The police arrived in minutes. James barely had time to react before 2 officers stepped inside, hands on their holsters. "Mr. Carter?" James tensed, sweat forming on his brow. "This is a misunderstanding," he started, his voice desperate. But I had already won. "He pushed me." Olivia cried dramatically, clutching her leg as paramedics attended to her. James turned to me, pleading with his eyes. "Emily, please, tell them I wouldn't." I slowly shook my head. "I don't know what happened, officer," I said, playing the perfect role. "I just walked in and saw Olivia lying at the bottom of the stairs." One of the officers stepped forward. "Mr. Carter, you need to come with us." "Wait." James didn't get another word out before cold metal cuffs snapped around his wrists, his expression twisted in horror. "Emily," he yelled as they dragged him toward the door. "Don't do this, please." I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't smile, yet, not until the police car disappeared down the street. Then, I turned to Olivia. She was watching me, realization dawning in her wide, terrified eyes. She finally understood. I hadn't just destroyed James, I was coming for her too. James's trial was swift and merciless. His lawyer argued for self-defense, claiming Olivia's injuries were an accident. But I had one final move to make. I sent one last anonymous email, this time to the prosecution. Inside, security footage from a nearby traffic camera, showing James grabbing Olivia's arm, pushing her before she fell. It was the final nail in his coffin. The judge delivered the verdict. "James Carter, you are found guilty of assault. You are hereby sentenced." James didn't hear the rest. He was too busy staring at me, his face white with disbelief. I met his gaze, my expression blank. But just before he was taken away, I let one final smirk slip through. James Carter was officially ruined. And I was just getting started. James was gone, arrested, convicted, disgraced. His name was ruined, his career destroyed, and his freedom stripped away. But I wasn't finished yet. There was still one more loose end to tie up, and Olivia Carter was about to make her final mistake. I was enjoying a quiet afternoon when my phone buzzed, an unknown number. I already knew who it was. I answered, keeping my voice calm and measured. "Emily." Olivia's voice was frantic, her breath ragged. "I need your help." I leaned back into my chair, twirling my wine glass between my fingers. "Help," I echoed, feigning surprise. "Olivia, after everything that's happened, why would you come to me?" "Please," she begged. "I don't have anyone else. James is in jail and the police are investigating me. If I don't get out of here soon, they're going to arrest me too." She sounded terrified, and she should be. Her hands were just as dirty as James's, maybe even worse. Fraud, forgery, obstruction of justice. The list of charges against her was growing by the day. The police were closing in, and now, in her desperation, she had run straight into my trap. "I don't know, Olivia," I murmured, pretending to hesitate. "I mean, after everything you and James put me through." "I know," she interrupted. "I know we treated you horribly, but please, Emily, if you help me now, I'll disappear forever. I just need money to leave the country. You can do that for me, can't you?" I let silence stretch between us, long enough for her to sweat. Then, with the perfect sigh of reluctant sympathy, I said, "Fine, I'll help you." Olivia let out a choked sob of relief. "Oh my God, thank you. Thank you, Emily." "Meet me at the train station," I told her. 8 p.m. I'll bring the money." She didn't hesitate. "I'll be there." The train station was nearly empty, the dim yellow lights flickering overhead. Olivia stood near the platform, her hood pulled low, constantly looking over her shoulder. She was nervous. She had every reason to be. I approached her slowly, a duffel bag in my hand. "You actually came," she said, exhaling shakily. "Of course I did," I said smoothly, handing her the bag. $10,000. More than enough to disappear. Her hands trembled as she unzipped it, staring at the neatly stacked bills inside. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. I smiled. "No need." I checked my watch. 7:59 p.m. Right on time. In the distance, I heard the screech of tires. Then, the flashing red and blue lights, the sound of heavy boots pounding the pavement. "Freeze! Hands where we can see them!" Olivia's head snapped up, her eyes widening in horror. She turned to run, but it was too late. 3 officers surrounded her, guns drawn. "Olivia Carter, you are under arrest." Her mouth opened in shock, her gaze whipping back to me. Realization dawned in her eyes. "You." I tilted my head, watching as they shoved her onto the ground, cuffing her hands behind her back. "You betrayed me," she shrieked, kicking and thrashing. "Emily, you set me up." I bent down slightly, just enough to whisper the final words she'd ever hear from me. "No, Olivia. You set yourself up the moment you called me." Her screams faded into the night as they dragged her into the police car. And just like that, it was over. Meanwhile, in a small, dimly lit jail cell, James Carter sat alone. The mattress beneath him was thin, the air stale and suffocating. He had lost track of time, of the days slipping through his fingers. His thoughts were plagued with regret, with rage, with confusion. And then, one day, a guard approached his cell. "You have a visitor," the man said gruffly. James lifted his head, his eyes dull and lifeless. For a second, hope flickered inside him. Was it his lawyer? Someone coming to get him out? He was escorted to the visitation area, shackles clinking as he was forced into a chair. The moment he saw me sitting across from him, that hope shattered. His eyes darkened. "Emily," he muttered, his voice raw with hatred. I smiled. "James." For a long moment he just stared at me as if trying to piece everything together. And then, finally, he realized it. "It was you," he whispered. "You did all of this." I tilted my head, amused. "Did what?" His fists clenched against the table. "You destroyed my life." I leaned forward slightly, my smile never faltering. "Oh, James," I sighed, mocking his past condescension. "You destroyed your own life. I just helped speed things along." His face twisted in rage, but there was nothing he could do. "You think you've won?" he hissed. "You think this makes you better than me?" I shrugged. "I don't need to be better than you, James. I just needed to make sure you suffered the way I did." He lurched forward, his chains stopping him from reaching me. I didn't flinch. "And now," I continued, standing up slowly, "you'll rot in here, alone, just like you left me." I turned to leave, but before I stepped away, I paused just long enough to drop one last bombshell. "Oh, and in case you were wondering, Olivia won't be coming to save you." James froze. His breath hitched. "What?" I glanced over my shoulder, grinning. "She was arrested last night. Fraud. Obstruction of justice. She'll be locked away for a long, long time." His face went completely blank. I watched as realization set in. James Carter was completely alone. No power, no money, no job, no allies. I had taken everything from him, and it was too late for him to do anything about it. With one final smirk, I turned and walked away, leaving James to rot in his prison of regrets. James Carter sat hunched over the edge of his prison cot, his face buried in his hands. His once proud posture was now nothing more than a slumped, broken figure. His hair, unkempt and matted, hung over his hollow eyes that had not known rest in weeks. His cell was suffocatingly small and cold, but that wasn't what tormented him. It was the silence. The echoing footsteps of the guards, the distant murmurs of other inmates. It was all drowned out by the one voice that refused to leave his head. Emily's voice. You destroyed my life once. Now I've returned the favor. He heard it in his dreams. He heard it in the dead of night, when the cell was pitch black, when shadows crawled along the walls like ghosts. But worst of all, he heard it when he was awake. And that was how he knew. He was losing his mind. It started with a phone call. Inmates were allowed one monitored call per week, and James had spent weeks calling the only number that mattered. Emily never answered, until now. The line clicked. For a moment there was nothing, no breathing, no words, just cold, suffocating silence. Then finally, James, his breath hitched. Her voice was exactly as he remembered it, but this time it held no warmth, no love. It was empty, unforgiving. Emily, he whispered, his hands tightening around the phone. Another pause. Then, her voice, calm and deadly. You destroyed my life once. Now, I've returned the favor. James felt his chest tighten, a sharp panic rising in his throat. Emily, please, he choked out. Please, Click. The line went dead. James froze, his pulse hammering in his ears. He stared at the phone in his hands, disbelieving, as if he could will her voice to come back. But she was gone, and now he was truly alone. After that night, Emily's presence followed him everywhere. At first, it was small things, a whisper in the dark, so faint he wasn't sure he heard it at all. A shadow at the edge of his vision, gone when he turned his head. Then it got worse. One night, he woke up gasping for breath, his chest heaving as if something was pressing down on him. In the darkness, he swore he saw her, standing at the foot of his bed, watching, her face unreadable, her eyes cold. James squeezed his eyes shut, gripping his head. She's not here. She's not here. She's not here. But when he opened them again, she was still there. A choked sound escaped his throat as he stumbled back, his back hitting the damp prison wall. But when the guards came running, they found nothing. Nothing but a shaking, broken man, muttering Emily's name over and over like a prayer, or a curse. Days passed, but James no longer knew how to count them. He stopped eating, stopped talking. Every shadow, every flicker of movement, every whisper in the prison halls became her. She was everywhere and nowhere. When he closed his eyes, he saw her smiling at him, her lips forming the words that haunted him the most. You destroyed my life once. Now I've returned the favor. James Carter had thought he was untouchable. Now he was nothing. A wreck of a man lost in his own mind, haunted by the one person he should have never betrayed. From a distance, I watched. Not physically, no. I didn't need to see him to know what was happening. I had won. James wasn't just suffering, he was rotting. Not in body, but in mind, in soul. I had taken everything from him, and yet he still had one final punishment to endure. Living with himself. A man can endure pain, loss, humiliation, but what he can't escape is his own mind. I smiled to myself, sipping my wine as the sun set outside my window. James's suffering had only just begun, and for the first time in my life, I was finally free. James Carter had nothing left. No family, no career, no freedom. And now, not even his sanity. He had lost everything. And in the end, there was only one way out. The prison cell was silent, the air heavy with despair. James sat on the edge of his cot, his body frail, his hands trembling. His mind had become a living hell, haunted by the ghost of a woman who wasn't even dead. Emily. Her whispers still filled his ears, her cold smile flashing in the dark corners of his mind. He had tried to shut her out, but the guilt, the fear, it was suffocating him. He could no longer eat, he could no longer sleep, he could no longer live. So, he wouldn't. James reached into the waistband of his uniform, fingers curling around the sharpened edge of metal. A rusty shard from a broken bed frame, the only escape he had left. His breath hitched as he pressed it against his wrist, his grip tightening. This was it. The end. And for the first time in weeks, he felt a strange sense of relief. At least in death, he would finally be free from her. Wouldn't he? James didn't die, not yet. The guards found him too soon, his body slumped on the cell floor, his wrists soaked in crimson. They called for emergency assistance, rushing him to the prison hospital. He woke up to the harsh sting of antiseptic, the steady beep of a heart monitor. His vision swam as he struggled to focus on the ceiling above him. He was alive, and Emily was there, sitting beside his hospital bed, watching him, waiting. James's chest seized with panic. No, you're not real, he rasped, his throat dry, his pulse erratic. She tilted her head, her expression eerily calm. You wanted to escape me, didn't you? She whispered. James shook his head violently, his breathing turning frantic. No, please. Emily leaned closer, her lips just inches from his ear. Even death won't free you from me. James let out a strangled gasp, his entire body convulsing in terror. His heart pounded violently against his ribs, his lungs clawing for air. No. The monitors screeched, alarms blaring. His vision darkened, his body going rigid, and then, nothing. The nurses found him moments later, his body still, his eyes wide open in horror. What happened? One of them gasped. His heart just stopped. Another whispered, checking the unresponsive monitor. The doctor frowned, glancing at James's face. His expression was twisted in fear, mouth slightly open, as if he had died seeing something horrifying. What do you think he saw? A young intern murmured, shivering. No one answered, because no one knew, except Emily. She watched from the doorway for a few more moments, then slowly turned away, stepping into the hallway, her heels clicking softly against the tile floor. She didn't look back, because she didn't need to. James Carter was gone. And her revenge? Complete. The past was buried, and with it, everyone who had once wronged me. James Carter was dead. Olivia was rotting in prison. And I was free. The last remnants of my old life had no place in my future, so I sold everything. The house James and I once shared? Gone. His remaining assets liquidated. Every last connection to the life where I had once been a victim, erased. With a few signed papers and a single wire transfer, I was wealthy, untethered, and invisible. And for the first time, I had the power to choose where my story would go next. So I packed my bags, and I left. The place I chose was far from the ruins of my past, a quiet, coastal town where no one knew my name, a place where Emily Carter didn't exist anymore. I had more money than I'd ever need, but revenge had never been about the money. It was about justice. And now that I had it, it was time to turn my pain into something more. I started a charity, funding shelters for abused women who had been broken down by men like James. Women who needed an escape, a second chance, just like I had. It was a poetic ending to the suffering I had endured. But unlike James and Olivia, my story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. One afternoon, as I walked down the street, I saw them, a young couple laughing together, their fingers laced, their faces glowing with happiness. Once, the sight of love had made me bitter. But today, for the first time in years, I smiled. Not because I envied them. Not because I missed what I had lost, but because the past no longer haunted me. I wasn't a woman scorned, I wasn't a victim, I was just me. And for the first time, that was enough. That evening, I stood on the cliffs watching the sunset paint the ocean in gold and crimson hues. The wind was warm, the waves soft, the horizon endless. I closed my eyes, inhaled the salty air, and whispered, I lived for others in my past life. A pause, a breath. Then, with a quiet smile, I finished. This time I live for myself. And with that, I walked forward, toward the future, toward freedom. Thank you for listening to LNC Studios stories. If you find them interesting, please subscribe and like.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss any future content.